everybody? This is Mr. Wagstaff. Cool stuff to talk about today. You're going to like this. So, we're back on the Civil War. The story progresses today. So, we've already had the first Battle of Bull Run, in which Lincoln tried to send an army down, led by Irvin McDowell, down into Richmond. It didn't go well. Nobody was trained. So, now everybody's had to regroup and come up with a game plan. All right? So, that's what we're going to pick up today. How is the North going to be able to defeat the South in a war that clearly looks like it's not going to be an easy win, all right, as previously expected? So, what I need to explain to you now, all right, is there's two theaters, all right, in the Civil War, all right? There's basically like two wars that are going to go on simultaneously, all right? Now, the reason that this is going to go on simultaneously, all right, is there's these things right here. Boop. Mr. Wagstaff, are those like half triangles? Nope. These here be mountains. The Appalachian Mountains. And the Appalachian Mountains run all up and down the eastern seaboard. Like this, all right? So, it is really hard to cross over these mountains this way. Very hard. Or this way. You can do it. It's not that you can't do it, but it just takes a really, really long time. Train tracks don't really run around the mountains. Most of the train tracks, you'd have to go around this way. So there's really no quick way of getting from one side to the other. Now, the North, as we had talked about previously, the North wants to take over the Mississippi River, which is right here. That would complete their Anaconda plan, all right? However, the Mississippi River out here, all right, is very, very well defended by a whole bunch of forts, like these little dots up and down the Mississippi River. So, trying to take over the Mississippi River and complete the Anaconda plan, this is basically suicide. We had talked about this in a previous lesson. It would be very, very difficult to do this. But, hey, you got to have a plan B. Lincoln still believes he can go from Washington, D.C., which is right here, to Richmond, which is right here, all right, and take it over. He thinks that's going to be the clearest way of victory is just to take over Richmond. But just in case, he needs a plan B here. So, you have to have, I will use yellow, you have to have an army here, all right, to try to take over the Mississippi River. And you have to have an army here, I should have it closer to Washington, D.C., in order to take over Richmond. Because these two armies cannot go back and forth. Because the Appalachian Mountains make it very, very difficult. So you cannot quickly move back and forth. You can move back and forth, all right, with wagons and stuff like that. However, if your army's here and you get attacked here, you can't make it back fast enough to defend anything. So that's why you basically have to divide your army in half, and there's going to be two separate wars. Because of that, all right, this here is referred to as the West. All right. West. Make sure I can spell that right. West. And then, super creatively, guess what this is called here? This is the East. All right. And what divides it? The Appalachian Mountains right here. All right. So there's basically two different wars that are going to take place, the East and the West. Separate generals, all right? Because there's going to be people just that fight in the West and in the East. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about the different generals that Lincoln's going to put in here. We're going to get back to his basketball team today. All right. So at the start of the Civil War, there's two main generals for the South. All right. This isn't real confusing because it's actually really, really simple. That we'll start out and we will reference. It is not Robert E. Lee. Because if you remember, where's Robert E. Lee? He's just over here washing dishes. You guys need me yet? Yep. Washing dishes? All right. So they got Robert E. Lee doing nothing right now. All right. And the reason being, they don't really trust him. He left the United States military, came to the South. He's just hanging out until he's called upon. All right. So who's in charge for the South? All right. In the East, the head dude in charge is a guy named Johnston. You know, I should really figure out a way to write this faster. Johnston. All right. So that's the guy for the South. Over here, his job is to defend Richmond here. All right. So the guy over here in the West that's supposed to defend the Mississippi River, his name is Johnston as well. It's the I'm not going to spell it again. I'm not going to spend that much time making you watch me spell Johnston again. It's completely different men that aren't even related. They just happen to both be named Johnston. It's important, I guess, to kind of know who's starting out in charge. Spoiler alert, they both die. All right. So, Johnston here is in the east, and there's a Johnston here in the west. So, I'm not going to do it. All right. So, you have the west and you have the east. We good? Because the story gets good today, and you're going to like this. All right. So, there's a Johnston in the east and a Johnston in the west. Brings us back to Lincoln and the basketball team. All right. Put myself down here. All right. So, this is Lincoln, as we had talked about in the previous day, and this is his bunch of backups he's got, his generals that he's got to put into the game in order to fight against the A team, which is all his generals that left, and we joked about it being I joked about it. I don't know if you joked about it or giggled or not. Being like the Harlem Globetrotters that is left, so he has his bench warmers he's got to put in. There are some struggles. Well, the first guy he had put in was this guy, General Irving McDowell. He was the little guy, or the guy on the team. They got a little bit of playing time. All right. So when he got put in, let me move myself up here. All right. When he got put in, what happened? He fought in the east. All right. Because I'll use this graphic quite a bit in this. He fought in the east. And what happened? He lost the first Battle of Bull Run. All right. Again, there's only one Battle of Bull Run at this point in the story, but it will eventually be referred to as the first Battle of Bull Run. He lost the first Battle of Bull Run, and he's on his way back to Washington, D.C. Lincoln is not happy when people lose. So Lincoln has to find somebody that he can put in the West. Somebody to go take over the Mississippi River. Now, this is like a suicide mission, all right? Who is he going to put in charge there to do that? I'll move myself over here on the side. Lincoln don't change. We'll just put myself here. So, who's he going to choose from? So, here's who he's got left on his bench. All right. He's got the old veteran whose best days are behind him. All right. Who's slow. All right. Pivotal for this man, slow. The next guy is the guy who's been on the team for a long time. Can't remember what his name is. Now it's just weird. You got your moron. You got your coward. You got your rookie, who's brand new to the team. Nobody really even knows him. And you got your crazy dude. Crazy dude's crazy doing weird stuff at the end of the bench. But he's just crazy. And he's crazy. All right. Who are you going to put in? Well, Lincoln's like, this is basically like a suicide mission. So I guess, I don't know. I need to put somebody in that I'm not really going to miss. All right. When they get horribly killed, I'm not going to miss them. He's going to choose the rookie. Because, hey, who's this guy? Nobody even knows. So the rookie he puts in is a guy you may have heard of before. That is Ulyssess S. Grant. So Ulyssess S. Grant, he gets put into the game. All right. The reason I refer to Ulyssess S. Grant as the rookie is he wasn't even a general when Lincoln puts him in charge. All right. He had shown a lot of promise. All right. So he actually has to be promoted to general when given command of the army in the West to go try to take over the Mississippi River, which is basically like a suicide mission. The reason Grant was not considered, had not moved up to general before, even though he had a lot of good experience and had done a lot of good stuff, and this is a well-known fact about Ulyssess S. Grant, is he was an alcoholic. That he was a struggling alcoholic, not like a recovering alcoholic where he had stopped drinking, like he drank a lot on a daily basis, and he was a severe alcoholic. Interesting, it did not affect him militarily. I mean, he wasn't drunk when he went into battle and stuff. He would just drink very heavily every single day and had to. All right. Or otherwise he would go into withdrawals. But he was sober when it was decision time. However, when somebody is a severe alcoholic like Ulyssess S. Grant is, you don't put them in charge of the entire military, regardless of how good they are. So that is why Ulyssess S. Grant had never moved up to the general. That's why I call him a rookie here, because he's new And he's the only person here who is not already a general. All right. So he actually had to be promoted just to get put in charge. And he's like, we'll see what happens. So Ulysses S. Grant gets put in charge here for the West. This is a photograph of Ulysses S. Grant. All right. So Ulysses S. Grant, not only was he an alcoholic, he smoked 20 cigars a day. 20 cigars. Now, I am not a cigar smoker. Not really around anybody that is, but my understanding is cigars aren't like cigarettes. They take a long time to consume or smoke. How in the world do you have enough time in the day to smoke 20 of them? Like, that can't be good. Not only that, and now this picture is a famous picture of him. There's not a lot of photographs at the time, and we'll talk about photographs as we get further into American history. But this is a relatively unique picture of him wearing his general's uniform. He usually just wore a private's uniform. And this is going to be one of the things, he's going to be one of the few successful generals for the United States in the Civil War, that he usually just dressed like a private because there are very few pictures of him. So if the idea was if he got captured, he could just pretend to be a private and be like, I don't know where that Grant guy is. And then they could like scamper off. So this is him wearing his general's uniform. He's just, if you described him, that he's dirty, he's stinky, he's rough and tumble. And it's unique because there ends up, as the Civil War goes on, comparisons between Grant and Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee looks like $1,000,000 all the time. Robert E. Lee is clean cut. He has his very well-maintained beard. Everything is clean. He's like an aristocrat. And Ulysses S. Grant just looks dirty. All right. The quote here from Grant is, "The art of war is simple enough. Find out where your enemy is. Get at him as soon as you can. Strike him as hard as you can. And keep moving on." So you're like, yeah, okay, just attack the guy. Cool. That seems like a logical thing to do. You would be surprised at the inability of a lot of those other generals that are still on the bench to be able to do this. But Grant gets sent out here into the West just to see what will happen. All right. So here's what happens. All right. So Grant, all right, he moves out here, and there's these little tiny rivers as you're moving out towards the Mississippi. There's two little forts out here, Fort Henry here and Fort Donelson here. All right. He gets up to these forts, and most people just assume he's going to get murdered. He annihilates Fort Henry and Fort Donelson. What doesn't annihilate him, he captures them and makes them United States property again, because these are right here on the border states. And when he has some success, Lincoln hears about it through telegraph, is how they communicate. Like, beep, 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 beep. And Lincoln's like, heck yeah. All right, well, good do your thing, Grant. So Grant starts pushing further down south to take over some of the bigger forts that are probably over in this area on the Mississippi. So as he's pushing down south, he is going through an area called Shiloh. Now, if you remember, all right, who was the leader of the Confederacy in the West for the South? That was Johnston. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to say it. Make you watch me spell it again. So Johnston, he's the guy down here, and he knows Grant is coming. So this is a legit huge army, like 100,000 man army that's coming in. Because the North has no shortage of soldiers. They have no shortage of supplies. So they're just kind of rolling through. So Shiloh, I don't even know if it's a town. It might just be an open area, like a field, and they just happen to be passing through. Johnston, all right, he's just waiting down here, waiting for Lincoln to walk into his trap, because Johnston is going to sneak attack Grant. And right here's Johnston, and he is going to come up and sneak attack Grant. When fighting starts, and they just kind of in the middle of this field, and vicious fighting takes place, Grant hides behind trees and stuff. Like his men are, even though they're getting sneak attacked, they are very effective fighters. All right. So Grant takes heavy losses all day, and they fight and they fight and they fight, and then it gets nighttime. All right. Now, nobody fights at night. In the Civil War, people just don't fight at night. Why don't they fight at night? Because they can't see nothing. There are no lights. I mean, pitch black. All right. So you can't see who you're shooting at or what's happening. So when it gets dark, both sides take a step back to their respective camps, and they just kind of hang out for the night. So there's like a camp here and there's a camp here. Now, Johnston fully expects, with the amount of damage that he has inflicted on Grant because he caught Grant off guard, that the next day, that when they wake up, Grant will have retreated in the middle of the night. All right, because Grant has lost so many men, he really needs to turn around and retreat. Now, that might be what the smartest thing to do is for Grant, is to retreat in the middle of the night. But he doesn't. And it's hard for me to understand why he doesn't. So here's, in my imagination, what has happened. Grant gets drunk. I mean, now I say that Grant very easily may not drink while he was on campaign, but being an alcoholic, I think it would be hard for him not to without going into withdrawals. So I imagine Grant's been drinking. He's like, hey guys. Now his men love Grant, right? So I imagine it was like an open conversation. He's like, all right guys, here's what we can do. We can like go back home and live. Or at first light tomorrow, we can just charge them, fight to the death, and we all die. You know what his men vote to do? Charge and fight and everybody die. Now, I don't know they voted to do this, but this is the decision that gets made. Instead of retreating like they should, Grant's like, we're going for it. So I imagine after they've made this decision at night, they're attacking first thing in the morning, even though they're extremely wiped out from the attack that day, that everybody's just like hanging out and getting drunk and like, oh, we're all going to die tomorrow. Who cares? All right. Grant doesn't die the next day. Actually, the complete opposite. So right in the morning, as Grant is waking up and all of his men are getting ready to go charge in here and get completely wiped out by Johnston, unknown to Grant in the middle of the night, he gets reinforcements by another army that shows up. So this dude, Buell, shows up, sees that Grant is ready to attack, and is like, what is wrong with him? And Grant's like, hey, more people, let's charge, and basically bum rushes Johnston. Johnston's army is not even out of camp when this battle starts because they were expecting Grant to be gone. At the Battle of Shiloh, which is a 2-day battle, they completely annihilate, they completely annihilate Johnston and all of his men. Johnston gets killed in this battle. Johnston, all right, is the highest ranking officer that dies in the Civil War, all right? So Johnston is killed. This is a huge blow to the Confederacy. Now you're like, wait, he was ranked higher than Robert E. Lee, which we have yet to get to yet, all right? Robert E. Lee doesn't die in the Civil War. Spoiler alert, he doesn't die. So this is the highest ranking person that dies for the Confederacy. Johnston was a legit commander, all right? That's why he was out here defending the Mississippi, which is the lifeline of the Confederacy. When Johnston dies, he gets shot in the leg and bleeds out and actually sends his own personal doctor to help out other people and you know, more detail than you would ever be tested on. Johnston dies and his army gets wiped out. The South is really short on soldiers. So they're not necessarily short on having good leaders, like Johnston was a great leader, but what they are short on is big armies because they don't have as many people. So after Johnston and the army out here in the West gets wiped out, there is no Southern commander that gets put out in the West to continue this battle in the West against Grant. So after Johnston gets wiped out, what ends up happening is Grant, who teams up with his reinforcements here, and Grant's in charge, all right? Grant is going to basically go up and down the Mississippi River here and attack fort after fort after fort after fort. Where did all that weird stuff come up? Hold on. Let's see if I can try that again. So going up and down the Mississippi River, attacking fort after fort after fort. So we don't talk a whole lot more for a couple lessons here about the West, which is Grant wrecking shop up and down the Mississippi River. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about in future lessons how much struggles Lincoln is having trying to attack Richmond because all the other guys on the bench are awful. Grant just kind of quietly wrecks shop over here, and it's really surprising because this here should be the suicide mission. And Grant continues to have success in the West almost the entire war. All right, or the duration of the war, Grant does have success. All right, but the Battle of Shiloh, 24,000 Americans died in a 2-day battle. Is the bloodiest battle at that point? Is the bloodiest battle in the history of America at the time. 24,000 Americans died. Keep in mind, in a 10-year war we had in Iraq after 2003, after the September 11th attacks, which we'll talk about, just put it in perspective of the time period. Not that Iraq had anything to do with the September 11th attacks, but 2003 up to about 2015 or so, we lost about 5,000 American troops in a decade in the Middle East, in a war that spanned 2 different countries, Afghanistan and Iraq. We lost, Americans, 24,000 people in 2 afternoons in the same field. Baffling. The Battle of Shiloh now shows the scope of how brutal this Civil War will continue to become. This is a picture here of the Battle of Shiloh. If you can notice, people are hiding behind trees. That's smart. Remember yesterday we talked about how if you don't, you're going to die because of rifled bullets and all that. So people start learning, hey, let's hide behind something. It's not like the muskets that are really inaccurate. We now have rifled bullets and they're much more accurate in the Civil War. And you're fighting against Americans, and Americans have a tendency to be really good at killing people. All right. You are going to like this story. This is a ridiculous story. All right. There's also not a real good time to throw this into the teaching, so I'm going to throw it in. Most of the Civil War, I should point out, we used weapons that were already available in the rest of the world. There's nothing really cutting edge about our weapons. Our tactics were actually a little behind the tactics being used in Europe, like hide behind a tree. All right. So there's very little in the American Civil War that changes the rest of the world. Very little. Except for this battle. This battle is going to fundamentally change the entire Earth, and it does not change the Civil War. All right? It is the most pivotal battle that takes place on Earth at the time, and the entire world is like, oh my gosh. And literally does nothing for the North or the South. All right? It's a really weird situation. So when other countries talk about the American Civil War, this is about the only battle that they talk about because it affects the rest of the world. So let me tell you what this is. We're back in the East. This is the only naval battle. It means boats fighting. All right. So it's in the East. It's in the ocean. So the United States Navy has a whole bunch of ships, and they're all made of wood. All right. They've put a blockade on the South, keeping the South from taking their cotton and sending it over to England. All right. So the South doesn't have the ability to make a fleet of ships. So what the South does is they are going to make a ship, a steel ship. It's ironclad. It's iron and steel. It's a combination. So sometimes they're called iron ships, steel ships. For this point, it's the same thing. So ironclad ships. They're going to make a metal ship. All right. Now, why has nobody ever made a metal ship before? And you're like, well, maybe they didn't know how to get them to float. They understood how to get big ships to float. Like you look at cruise ships today, they're massive and it's amazing that they can float. The basic science of water displacement has been around for a long time. That's not why ships haven't been made out of metal. The reason ships haven't been made out of metal prior to this is because there's no way to power them. All right. It used to be sails or rows. Metal ships are too heavy for rows or sails. But now you got the steam engine. All right. And you can have a propeller or underwater paddles, something else to power these ships. So now you can make a metal ship. And this is going to be a game changer. And here's why. How do you sink a ship in the 1800s? You shoot it with a cannonball. You know what a cannonball is? Literally just a shot put. It's an iron ball. It doesn't go boom. It's just an iron ball. And a big myth in movies that you see is these like pirate ships line up next to each other and they fire at each other trying to knock each other off the deck. No, all the cannons are pointed down. You're shooting at the bottom of each other's ships, trying to punch holes in it till it sinks, because everybody's ships is made out of wood. Well, what if you made a ship that was made out of metal? It's invincible. So the South spends every penny that they have to make a top secret, super top secret ship called the Merrimack. So the South has a top secret ship called the Merrimack. It's a big old, it's like a barn, and it's like on a steam engine. So they finally complete it. Now, keep in mind, the South has all this cotton just piled up, and they can't sell it to England and France because they can't get it off their coastline because they can see all these wooden United States Navy ships sitting out in the horizon. So what they do is once the Merrimack is complete, they're like, all right, send it out. Let's see what happens. So the Merrimack sails out into the ocean, into the Atlantic Ocean. Now, if you're one of these wooden ships that are using sails, and you see this ship coming at you, it's really weird. It's like a big old barn coming at you that's floating on the water. Most of it's underwater because of water displacement and how ships work. But it looks like a barn coming at you. And since it's using a steam engine, there's all this like smoke rolling out of it. It looks like a barn that's on fire rolling up at you. And they're like, what is that? And it rolls up next to this ship. And I imagine there's a guy hops out the top and it's like, your mama, I don't know, and hops back in, and the North is like, oh no, he didn't, and they open fire on the Merrimack. When they open fire on the Merrimack, guess what happens? All the cannonballs bounce off. Ding, ding, ding. You can't damage it. And then the Merrimack sends out its cannons and just levels the ship. So all the other wooden ships come and surround the Merrimack and just open fire on it. Ding, 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 ding. Then you know what the Merrimack does? Puts out its cannons and sinks every ship that's there. And it's completely untouched. Oh, the South done got itself a weapon. Now, I think I've mentioned this in a previous lesson, because this is dumb. But it's just a thing in the Civil War. No secrets can be kept in the Civil War. The North knew that the South was making a metal ship. So guess what the North spent a ton of money to make? A metal ship as well. Their ship is called the Monitor. But the Monitor is made differently than the Merrimack. The Monitor, most of the Monitor is underwater, and the only thing that's really above water is like this turret that spins around. So it looks like a hockey puck coming at you from a distance. So what they're going to do is they're going to send a Monitor out to go fight the Merrimack. So the Monitor comes rolling out, and it goes out there, and the Monitor and the Merrimack, they're going to face off against each other. All right? There's a picture of that right here. Is that what you were picturing in your mind at all? Well, I don't know how descriptive I was. So this is the Merrimack. It's like a barn that's on fire. And all this smoke is from the steam engines that they have. So this is the Merrimack right here, and the Monitor rolls up next to it. And if you can notice that how the Monitor is mainly below water, and the only thing really above water is this turret that can spin. So it's like a hockey puck on fire coming at you, I guess. So they roll up next to each other. I imagine the two guys hop out, talk trash to each other, and then they just open fire. All right? Ting, 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 ting. I can't imagine how much your ears must bleed being inside one of these ships. They can't damage each other. They can't. They both end up running out of ammunition. So after they run out of ammunition, they hop out, give each other the finger. I don't know. And they turn around and they both go back to their harbors. This is a game changer on the whole world. Because everybody's got a navy. Guess what's worthless now? Your navy. Because one iron ship can take out an entire fleet of wood ships. Everybody after this battle realizes wooden ships are obsolete. So these countries like England, who have always had a dominant navy, basically have to scrap all of their ships. Every country on Earth within the next 20 or 30 years after this, scrap all of their wooden ships and start making metal ships. So it makes everybody that had navies of different strengths, everybody's back at zero. So whoever can make ships the fastest will have the most powerful navy on Earth. Guess who can make things faster than anybody else? America. After the Civil War, when everybody's wooden ships get just thrown away because they realize they're worthless, America makes steel ships. After the Civil War, guess who becomes a world power? America. And it's because we make a steel ship faster than other people can. And we get the biggest navy on Earth, and we become a superpower. That's how America becomes a superpower. Spoiler alert, and we'll talk more about it in detail when we get there. But the story's not over. This is bonkers, man. So, when the Monitor and the Merrimack go back to their docks, a week later a storm hits, and the Monitor sinks. Look at, I mean, the biggest nemesis has got to be a wave, right? So the Monitor sinks. So who has the top secret unstoppable weapon now? The South. Now, I was born and raised in the South. Proud to be in the South. The South is not stupid. People from the South aren't stupid. We talk with a drawl. Right? We got a country accent. We're not dumb, though. In North Carolina, the Research Triangle Park, which is like Raleigh, Durham, and Cary, I believe, has the highest percentage of doctors for population of anywhere on Earth. It's true. The NASA Space Center is in Georgia. All right, so Georgia has NASA. We're not dumb. But sometimes in history, we do dumb things that make us look really stupid, and it's really hard to get rid of the stereotype, and this is one of them. So, we have a top, so the South, from the South wasn't part of the Confederacy. The Confederate States of America have a top secret weapon. Guess what their biggest fear on Earth is with this weapon? Now, if you were like, oh, it'd be getting it destroyed, you'd be close. The South's biggest fear on Earth, is if the North stole it from them. Dum dum dum. Now that doesn't make any sense. They have one ship, so if the North steals it, it doesn't. Whatever. Their biggest fear is the North steals it. The South starts getting paranoid that the North is going to steal their ship. They sort of, no, we can't let them steal. We ain't going to let them steal. We ain't going to let them have it. So the South, to make sure the North can never steal their secret weapon, sinks it themselves on purpose. That's right. The South sinks the Merrimack on purpose so that the North can never steal it from them. The North is like, you just sank your secret weapon? Like, we know you don't have the money or supplies to make another one, all right? And the South gets blockaded again by the North, and the South can no longer trade with England and France. They can't sell their cotton. They can't get their food anymore. The South starts starving to death, and I can't understand the logic why the Confederacy would sink their own ship, but that's a thing that happened, and it's just incredibly dumb, and it was just a paranoia thing. But, all right, so that's the Monitor and the Merrimack. In the next lesson, we're going to start going through the other generals and trying to take over Richmond, which seems like it should be simple. It's definitely not. All right, so that is as far as we are going to get today. See you guys tomorrow.